Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a freelance graphic designer working from my apartment in Portland. But that Christmas Eve, the woman who raised me looked me dead in the eye and told me I didn't have a real career, right before she kicked me out of our family dinner. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been made to feel like your work doesn't matter? Like everything you've built means nothing because it doesn't fit someone else's definition of success? Because what happened next changed everything between my mother and me forever. It was December 24th, 2023. I'd driven 3 hours from Portland to my childhood home in Salem for our annual Christmas Eve dinner. The same dinner we'd had every year since I was 5. Same table, same chairs, same fake cheerfulness that barely covered the tension that always seemed to simmer in our house. I walked through that familiar front door carrying a bottle of wine and a gift bag, expecting the usual awkwardness, but nothing more. Mom was in the kitchen wearing her red Christmas sweater, the one with the sequined reindeer that she'd worn every Christmas for the past decade. She barely looked up when I came in. "Oh, you made it," she said, not stopping her aggressive stirring of what looked like gravy. No hug, no smile, just that tone that immediately told me I was already on thin ice, and I hadn't even taken my coat off yet. My older brother Mike was in the living room with his wife Jennifer and their 2 kids. He's a bank manager, has been for 8 years. Steady paycheck, health insurance, 401k, the whole package. Jennifer teaches 3rd grade. They own a house with a white picket fence. They are, in my mother's eyes, the perfect example of what success looks like. "Sarah," Jennifer called out, actually seeming happy to see me. "How's the design work going? Mike showed me that logo you did for his friend's restaurant. It's gorgeous." Before I could answer, Mom's voice cut through from the kitchen. "She's still doing that computer thing." That computer thing. As if 4 years of art school, 6 years building a client base, and a portfolio that includes logos for 3 local restaurants, 2 nonprofits, and a medical practice could be reduced to that computer thing. I bit my tongue. I always bit my tongue. It was Christmas Eve, after all. Dinner was the usual affair. Mom had made her famous pot roast, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and rolls that were actually store-bought, but she'd never admit it. We sat around the dining room table, the same table where I'd done homework, where we'd had birthday dinners, where I'd told my parents I was dropping out of my marketing major to pursue graphic design. That last conversation hadn't gone well. The dinner conversation started safely enough. Mike talked about the bank's holiday party. Jennifer shared stories about her students' Christmas pageant. The kids, 7-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Tyler, were excited about Santa coming. Normal family stuff. Then, Mom turned to me. "So, Sarah, are you still playing around with those drawings on your computer?" Playing around, not working, not building a business, playing around. "I'm designing, Mom. It's my job. I have clients who pay me to create their branding, their marketing materials." "But when are you going to get a real job?" The table went quiet. Even the kids stopped chattering about Santa. Jennifer looked uncomfortable. Mike suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. "This is my real job," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I make enough to support myself. I pay my rent, my bills." "Barely," Mom interrupted. "You live in that tiny apartment, driving that old car. Look at your brother. He has a house, a family, security. That's what a real career looks like." I felt my face getting hot. This wasn't new territory. Mom had been questioning my career choices since I graduated, but something about her tone tonight was different, sharper, more cruel. "Mom, I'm happy with what I do. I'm good at it. My clients—" "Your clients," she laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Sarah, you make websites for coffee shops. That's not a career. That's a hobby that pays a little money." Mike finally looked up. "Mom, maybe we could—" "No, Michael. Someone needs to tell her the truth. She's 32 years old, living like she's still in college. No benefits, no stability, no future. What happens when you get sick? What happens when you want to buy a house? What happens when you want to start a family?" Each question felt like a slap. But the worst part wasn't what she was saying. It was the way she was saying it, like I was a child who needed to be scolded. like my choices were inherently wrong and foolish. I have health insurance through the freelancer marketplace, I said quietly. I have savings. I have a 5-year business plan. A business plan, Mom scoffed. Sarah, you sit in your apartment all day drawing pictures. That's not a business. The room was so quiet I could hear the old grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Emma looked like she might cry, not because she understood what was happening, but because she could feel the tension. You know what? I stood up from the table. I think I should go. Sarah, don't be dramatic, Mom said, but she didn't sound like she wanted me to stay. Sit down and finish your dinner. No, I'm not being dramatic. I'm leaving because apparently my presence here is just a reminder of how disappointed you are in me. I grabbed my purse and coat. Jennifer started to say something, but I was already moving toward the door. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Mom called after me. Running away when someone tells you the truth. That's not how the real world works, Sarah. I stopped at the front door and turned around. Mom was standing in the doorway between the kitchen and living room, arms crossed, looking like she'd won some kind of victory. The real world, Mom? I live in the real world every day. I pay my bills. I take care of myself. I build things that matter to people. Just because it doesn't look like what you think success should look like doesn't make it any less real. When you're ready to grow up and get a real job, we can have this conversation again, she said. Until then, maybe it's better if you figure things out on your own. Those words hit me like ice water. Get a real job. Figure things out on your own. I left without saying goodbye to Mike or Jennifer or the kids. I drove 3 hours back to Portland in my old car, a 2018 Honda Civic that was perfectly reliable but apparently not good enough for Mom's standards, crying angry tears the whole way. When I got back to my tiny apartment, a 1-bedroom place in a great neighborhood with hardwood floors and big windows that cost me $1,400 a month, which I paid on time every month, I sat on my couch and really thought about what had just happened. My mother had essentially disowned my entire adult life. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, everything I was proud of, dismissed as playing around and not real. But here's the thing that really got to me. As I sat there in my apartment, surrounded by the tools of my trade, my computer, my drawing tablet, my portfolio binders, the thank you cards from satisfied clients, I started thinking about something Mom didn't know, something she'd never bothered to ask about. For the past 3 years, I'd been sending her money. Not loans, not one-time gifts, regular monthly support that she'd come to depend on without ever acknowledging where it was coming from. It started small. About 6 months after I graduated and was getting my business off the ground, Mom mentioned during one of our phone calls that money was tight. Dad had been gone for 5 years by then, heart attack at 58, and Mom was living on Social Security and a small pension from the school district where she'd worked as a secretary. The electric bill this month is killer, she'd said. I might have to choose between that and groceries. So I sent her $200, just transferred it right into her checking account with a note that said, for electricity. She called to thank me, said it was a huge help, said she'd pay me back when things got better. She never paid me back, and things never got better. Or at least, that's what she told me. The $200 became $300, then $400. By the end of the first year, I was sending her $800 a month. By year 2, it was $1,000. For the past year, I'd been transferring $200 every month, usually right after I got paid by my biggest clients. $1,200 every month for 3 years. I paid her electric bill. I paid her water bill. I paid her internet bill. The same internet she used to video call with Mike's kids, the same internet she used to post on Facebook about how proud she was of her son, the bank manager. I bought her groceries through online delivery services. I paid for her prescription medications. When her car needed repairs, I covered it. When she wanted to redecorate her living room, I transferred an extra $500, and never once, not once, did she ask where I was getting the money to help her. Because if she'd asked, she would have had to acknowledge that my computer thing, my playing around, my hobby that pays a little money, was generating enough income for me to support not just myself, but her too. As I sat in my apartment that Christmas Eve, I did some quick math. Over 3 years, I'd sent my mother $41,600, $41,600, nearly enough to buy a car, more than enough for a down payment on a house. Money that came directly from my freelance graphic design work, the work she'd just told me wasn't a real career. I pulled up my banking app and looked at the automatic transfer I had set up. Every month, on the 15th, $1,200 went from my business checking account to her personal account. It was scheduled to go through again in 3 weeks. I stared at that scheduled transfer for a long time. My mother thought I was a failure. She thought my work was meaningless. She thought I was irresponsible and childish and living in a fantasy world. But every month, her fantasy world was funded by my reality. The irony was almost laughable. Almost. I opened my laptop, the same laptop where I did all that playing around, and started looking through my files. 3 years of bank statements, 3 years of transfer confirmations, 3 years of receipts for money I'd spent on someone who apparently thought so little of how I earned it. There were screenshots of text messages, too. Messages where Mom asked for help with bills. Messages where she thanked me for being such a good daughter. Messages where she worried about money and I immediately offered to send more. But there were also other messages. Messages to Mike about his promotion at the bank. Messages about Jennifer's students and how rewarding teaching was. Messages about being proud of the life they'd built. Never once in 3 years of messages had she mentioned being proud of me. As I sat there going through this digital paper trail of my own generosity, something shifted inside me. The hurt from dinner was still there, but it was getting crowded out by something else. Anger, yes, but also clarity. My mother had built her comfortable little life on the foundation of my fake career, and she didn't even realize it. Or maybe she did realize it, and she just didn't care. Maybe it was easier to take my money and pretend it came from somewhere else than to admit that her daughter's hobby was successful enough to support 2 households. I thought about the Christmas ornament I'd made for her when I was in art school. It was a hand-painted glass ball with a winter scene, a little house with smoke coming from the chimney, snow-covered trees, a warm yellow glow in the windows. I'd spent hours on it, mixing the paints to get the colors just right, adding tiny details with brushes that were barely thicker than thread. When I gave it to her, she'd smiled and said it was beautiful. She'd hung it on the tree every year since then, right in the front where everyone could see it. But tonight, when I left, I'd noticed something. The ornament was gone. In its place was a new one, some generic thing Mike and Jennifer had probably picked up at Target. I wondered if she'd thrown my ornament away, or if it was just hidden somewhere behind the store-bought decorations. Either way, the message was clear. My mother wanted the financial benefits of having a successful daughter, but she didn't want to acknowledge that success if it didn't come in a form she approved of. Well, I was about to give her a lesson in exactly how real my career was. I pulled up my banking app again and looked at that scheduled transfer. $1,200, due to go through on January 15th. My finger hovered over the cancel button, but I didn't push it. Not yet. First, I wanted to see exactly how long it would take for my mother to notice that her daughter's fake job had very real consequences when it suddenly wasn't there to support her anymore. I wanted to see what happened when the money stopped, but the bills didn't. I wanted to see how not real my career felt when her lights got shut off. I spent the week between Christmas and New Year's doing something I'd never done before, documenting exactly how much I'd been supporting my mother. Not just the monthly transfers, but everything. Every grocery delivery, every utility payment, every prescription refill, every car repair. I created a spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, amount. Column C, description. Column D, her reaction when I helped. The numbers were staggering. December 2020 to December 2023. 36 months of financial support. $41,600 in direct transfers, but that was just the monthly payments. When I added up all the extras, the emergency car repairs, the prescription costs, the times she needed just a little help with groceries, the total came to $47,190. $47,890. That was more than I'd spent on my own rent in the same time period. More than I'd spent on my car, my equipment, my business expenses combined. I had literally been funding my mother's lifestyle while she told everyone who would listen that I didn't have a real job. But the documentation wasn't just about money. I screenshotted every text message where she'd asked for help, every email confirmation from grocery deliveries I'd paid for, every receipt from the online pharmacy where I covered her medications. The pattern became clear as I organized everything chronologically. She never said, please. She never said thank you more than once. And she never, not once, asked about my business or how I was able to help her. It was like the money just appeared in her account by magic. January 1st came and went. I didn't call her. She didn't call me. Mike texted me on New Year's Day asking if I was okay, but I just replied that I was fine and spending the holiday working on a new project. Which was true. The project just happened to be calculating exactly how much my fake career had been subsidizing her real life. January 15th arrived, the day my automatic transfer was supposed to go through. I sat at my computer at 11:58 p.m. on January 14th, cursor hovering over the Cancel Transfer button. My heart was pounding like I was about to commit a crime, even though all I was doing was stopping myself from giving away my own money. At 11:59, I clicked cancel. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 days later, a text message at 7:23 a.m. on a Thursday. Sarah, something's wrong with the bank. My account shows I'm short on the electric bill. Can you check with your bank about this month's transfer? I stared at that message for a full 5 minutes before responding. Hi, Mom. I'm not sure what you mean about a transfer. What transfer? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. The money you send every month. It didn't come through. I don't send money every month, Mom. What are you talking about? This time, the response came immediately. Sarah, don't play games. You've been sending me $1,200 every month for years. It didn't come through this month and I need it for bills. There it was, written in black and white. She knew. She'd always known exactly how much I was sending and when. But in 3 years, she'd never once connected that money to my work. It was just something that happened, like a natural phenomenon she'd come to depend on. I took a screenshot before responding. Mom, I'm a freelance graphic designer. I do computer things, remember? I play around with drawings. I don't have a real job. How could someone with a fake career afford to send anyone $1,200 a month? She called me immediately. I let it ring through to voicemail. The voicemail she left was illuminating. Sarah, this isn't funny. I have bills due. The electric company is threatening to shut off my power. I need that money. Whatever game you're playing, stop it. Call me back. No acknowledgement of what she'd said at Christmas. No recognition that the money she needed came from the work she'd dismissed. Just demand and expectation. I didn't call back. 2 days later, my phone rang. Emily, Mike's wife. Sarah, hi, it's Jennifer. Listen, your mom called Mike and she's pretty upset. She says you're not returning her calls and something about money not going through. Mike doesn't really understand what's happening, but she seems really stressed. What did she tell Mike exactly? She said there was some kind of banking error and her account was short for bills. She asked if he could loan her some money until it gets sorted out. I almost laughed. Banking error. What did Mike say? He said he'd help if he could, but we just had Tyler's surgery last month and our savings are pretty tight. He told her to call the bank and get it sorted out. After I hung up with Jennifer, I realized my mother was now in the position she'd been in before I started helping her 3 years ago. The difference was, back then, she'd been learning to live on her actual income. Now she'd had 3 years of lifestyle inflation funded by my hobby. The calls started coming more frequently, first every other day, then daily. I let them all go to voicemail. The messages evolved from confusion to frustration to anger. Sarah, I know you're getting these messages. This isn't like you. Something is wrong and I need your help figuring it out. Sarah, I went to the bank and they said there's no automatic transfer set up from your account. I don't understand what's happening. Sarah, my power got shut off today. I'm sitting in a cold house because of some mistake you won't help me fix. Call me back. That last message almost broke my resolve. Almost. But then I remembered Christmas Eve. I remembered when you're ready to grow up and get a real job. I remembered the ornament missing from her tree. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Patterson, Mom's next-door neighbor, called me on January 24th. "Sarah, honey, I hope you don't mind me calling. Your mother gave me your number a while back in case of emergencies. I'm worried about her." Mrs. Patterson was 78 years old and had lived next to Mom for 15 years. She'd known me since I was in high school. "What's wrong, Mrs. Patterson?" "Well, her power's been out for 3 days now. She keeps saying it's temporary, that there's been some kind of mistake with her bank, but Sarah, she asked if she could come over to use my shower. And she's been buying groceries with cash, but only little bits at a time, like she doesn't have much." Mrs. Patterson paused. "I don't want to pry, honey, but she mentioned you might be able to help her sort out this banking problem. I know you're busy with your computer work, but maybe you could give her a call?" My computer work. Even Mrs. Patterson understood what I did for a living better than my own mother. "Mrs. Patterson, can I ask you something? Has my mom ever mentioned what kind of work I do?" "Of course, dear. You're a graphic artist. You design things for businesses. Your mother showed me that beautiful logo you made for the Miller's restaurant downtown. She was so proud when she saw it in their window." I nearly dropped the phone. "She was proud?" "Oh, yes. She took a picture of it and everything. Said her daughter designed it and how talented you are." After I hung up with Mrs. Patterson, I sat in my apartment feeling like I was living in an alternate universe. My mother bragged to neighbors about my work, but told me to my face it wasn't real. She was proud of my logo design, but kicked me out of Christmas dinner for not having a real career. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. That night, I made a decision. I was going to end this charade, but I was going to do it properly. With witnesses, with evidence, with the kind of public revelation that would make it impossible for her to gaslight me or anyone else ever again. New Year's Eve had passed, but Mike and Jennifer were hosting their annual New Year's recovery party on the last Saturday of January. It was a family tradition, a way to gather everyone together after the holidays when schedules calmed down. Mike had texted me the invitation on January 1st, and I'd said I'd try to make it. Now I knew I definitely would be there. I spent the week preparing. I printed out bank statements. I organized the screenshots of text messages chronologically. I created a simple infographic showing the total amount I'd transferred over 3 years, the kind of professional-looking document I created for clients, but this time the client was Justice. I also did something else. I called Mrs. Patterson back and asked if she'd be willing to do me a favor. "Of course, dear. What do you need?" "I'm going to try to sort out this situation with my mom this weekend, but I might need someone to confirm a few things. Would you be willing to be on a phone call if I needed you to verify something?" "Absolutely. Your mother's been my neighbor for 15 years. I know what kind of daughter you've been to her." Saturday arrived. I drove to Mike and Jennifer's house carrying a folder of documents and a laptop, the same laptop where I did all that playing around. Mom was already there when I arrived, sitting on the couch looking tired and older than I remembered. She was wearing a sweater I'd bought her for her birthday last year, a detail that felt like salt in a wound. "Sarah!" Jennifer seemed genuinely happy to see me. "How are you? How's work going?" Before I could answer, Mom looked up. "Work," she said, with just enough emphasis to make it clear she was still using air quotes mentally. "Actually," I said, setting my laptop bag down, "work is going really well. I wanted to talk to everyone about that." I gathered the family in the living room. Mike, Jennifer, the kids were playing upstairs, and Mom sat across from me looking wary. "I want to clear up some confusion about my career," I began. "Mom, you said at Christmas that I don't have a real job, that I just play around on my computer." "Sarah, don't start this again," Mom said, but there was something different in her voice. Less certainty. "I'm not starting anything. I'm finishing something." I opened my laptop. "I want to show everyone what my fake job has been doing for the past 3 years." I pulled up my bank statements and turned the screen so everyone could see. "This is my business checking account. Mike, you work at a bank. Can you see these outgoing transfers?" Mike leaned forward and studied the screen. "Yeah, I can see them. Monthly transfers of, wow, $1,200? Going to—" He looked closer. "Mom, that's your account number." Mom's face went pale. "Sarah, don't what, Mom? Don't tell them that my hobby has been paying your bills for 3 years? Don't mention that the work you think isn't real has kept your lights on. I pulled out the printed statements. $47,890. That's how much my fake career has sent to my mother since 2020. Jennifer's mouth fell open. Sarah, are you serious? Dead serious. I handed her the infographic I'd created, broken down by month, by category. Electric bills, water bills, internet, groceries, prescriptions, car repairs, all paid for by someone who apparently doesn't have a real job. Mike was staring at Mom. Mom, is this true? Sarah's been sending you over $1,000 a month? Mom's silence was answer enough. But here's the really interesting part, I continued. 3 weeks ago, my mother told me I needed to grow up and get a real job. She kicked me out of Christmas dinner because my career wasn't legitimate enough for her, so I decided to see what would happen if my illegitimate career stopped subsidizing her life. I showed them the screenshot of the canceled transfer. January 15th. No more monthly support from my fake job. The power outage, Mike said suddenly. Mom, you said there was a banking error. There was no banking error, I said. There was a daughter who got tired of being told her work doesn't matter by someone who depends on that work to survive. Mom finally found her voice. Sarah, you're making this sound like what? Like you've been taking money from a job you don't respect? Like you've been living a lifestyle funded by work you think is worthless? I pulled out my phone and called Mrs. Patterson, putting it on speaker. Mrs. Patterson? Hi, it's Sarah. I'm here with my family and I wanted to ask you about something. You mentioned that my mom showed you the logo I designed for Miller's restaurant? Oh, yes, dear. She was so proud. Took a picture and showed it to half the neighborhood. Said her daughter was so talented, designing for businesses all over town. Everyone in the room could hear Mrs. Patterson's voice clearly. And Mom mentioned my work to you how, exactly? Well, she always calls it your graphic design business. Says you're doing so well, getting so many clients. She even mentioned how you've been such a good daughter, helping her out financially so she can stay in her house. The silence in the room was deafening. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. I'll talk to you later. After I hung up, I looked directly at my mother. So, let me understand this. To the neighbors, I'm a talented graphic designer with a successful business who's a good daughter helping you out. But to my face, I'm someone who plays around on a computer and needs to get a real job. Mom's eyes were filling with tears, but I wasn't done. You know what the saddest part is? I loved helping you. I was proud that my work was successful enough to support both of us. I felt good about being able to make sure you were comfortable and secure. I stood up and closed my laptop. But you couldn't just take my money. You had to also take my dignity. You had to make sure I knew that even though my fake job was good enough to pay your bills, it wasn't good enough to earn your respect. Jennifer was staring at Mom like she was seeing her for the first time. Mike looked completely lost. The money stops now, I said. Permanently. Not because I can't afford it, but because I finally understand that I was enabling someone who preferred to see me as a failure, even while my supposed failure was keeping her afloat. I packed up my documents and headed for the door. Sarah, wait, Mom called after me. I didn't mean... I am proud of you. I tell people, you tell other people because it makes you look good to have a successful daughter. But you couldn't tell me because then you'd have to admit that your worldview was wrong. You'd have to acknowledge that success doesn't only look one way. I stopped at the door and pulled something out of my bag. The Christmas ornament. The one I'd made for her in art school, the one that had disappeared from her tree. I found this in your garbage can when I went to check on your house last week, while you were staying at Mrs. Patterson's because your power was off. I set it on the table by the door. I spent hours on this. It was made with the same skills I use in my fake job every day. The attention to detail, the color mixing, the patience to get every tiny element right. But I guess when something comes from a career you don't respect, it's just trash. Mom was crying now. Sarah, please. I made a mistake. I was wrong. You weren't wrong about my career, Mom. You were wrong about your priorities. You chose to see failure where there was success, immaturity where there was responsibility, and worthlessness where there was value. I opened the door. My business is doing great, by the way. In the month since I stopped sending you money, I've signed 3 new clients and increased my monthly income by 40%. Turns out, when you stop subsidizing someone else's life, you have more energy to invest in your own. Where does this leave us? Mom asked quietly. I thought about that for a moment. It leaves us with you having to figure out how to live within your actual means, and me having to figure out how to have a relationship with someone who spent 3 years taking my success for granted while making me feel like a failure. I looked around the room one more time. Mike looked ashamed. Jennifer looked shocked. Mom looked broken. Maybe someday we can rebuild this, but it's going to start with you acknowledging that my work isn't just real. It's been the foundation holding up your entire financial life. And until you can do that, until you can respect what I've built instead of just benefiting from it, I need space. I left the ornament on the table and walked out. 3 months later, I opened my own design studio, a real office space with my name on the door and 2 employees. My monthly revenue hit $8,000 for the first time ever. I hired an accountant and started a proper retirement fund. I also framed the ornament. It sits on my desk now next to my computer where I do all that playing around. It reminds me that value doesn't disappear just because someone refuses to see it. Mom and I talk now, but it's different. She asks about my work, really asks, not just polite questions. She's had to downsize to a smaller apartment, and she's learned to live on her actual income. Mike helps her sometimes, but nothing like what I was doing. She sent me a text last week. Saw your logo on the new dental office downtown. It's beautiful. I'm proud of you. It was the first time she'd ever said those words about my work directly to me. I'm not sending her money anymore. Maybe someday I will again, if and when we rebuild trust. But if that day comes, it'll be as a gift freely given, not as a payment for acceptance I should have had all along. Have you ever been made to feel like your work doesn't matter by the very people who benefit from it? Have you ever had someone dismiss your success while secretly depending on it? Share your story in the comments. I'll read it, and I'll believe you, because sometimes the people who are supposed to support us are the ones who make us question our own worth. But your worth isn't determined by their approval. It's determined by what you build, what you create, and how you choose to value yourself. My name is Sarah, and I'm a graphic designer. It's not just what I do, it's who I am. And that's more than real enough.